Okay, well, hello everyone, and welcome to the League of Valiants podcast. My name is True Flash, or True Flash, whatever. And my co-host is Hoarder Gamer,
Hello.
and today we have Steve Orlando, who is very well known as a comic book artist for Marvel, DC, whoever it may be. How are you today, Steve?
I'm good.
That's good to hear. So, how we normally start, if you've ever been, whatever you want to say, like interview, whatever, they always start with the same question. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been making a living in comics since 2015, but before that, I had spent probably almost 20 years learning the trade and trying to break into comics. I started going after this job when I was 12 years old, and then I finally got in, as it were. Not that you're ever just cleanly in; you always got to
Hmm.
keep working. When I was like 28 or 29. So it was a long journey, hundreds, if not thousands, of rejected pitches. But then, one of them finally isn't, and then you got a foot in the door. So in one way or another, I've been around the comics industry probably since about 1997,
Wow.
and these days I'm at Marvel. I spent the first 5 years of my career at DC, and then in 2020 I went freelance and sort of bet on myself, and it's going well. I'm doing some stuff at Marvel, as you said, but I've pretty much done books anywhere, most places you can think of. It's been a really prolific period, and yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's also a dream come true to be able to work with these characters and tell stories for a living. So I am. I hope to do it as long as I can. We're keeping the hustle up in 2021. There's a lot of stuff coming out you folks know about, and even more that you don't.
That's
Awesome.
very exciting. Yeah. Um, so you said you started doing this like when you were like 12. Were you so you've always been like the writer, or do you also draw some?
I do not draw. No, not
Okay.
in any way that people would pay money for. At least.
That's fair. That's fair. So, with the writing, in a sense, so you said that like when you were 12, were you just like writing just stuff in general, or were you always just interested in writing comic books?
No, when I say that I was trying to break in at 12, it's not a euphemism. I was going to comic conventions, pitching comics, and showing them comic scripts and
Wow.
getting feedback. So
Oh wow.
I had done other stuff before that, but obviously I was quite young. I just sort of knew this is what I wanted to do. It's not the only job I've had. I worked a shoot job for 10 years before I could make a living in comics after college and before this. And I did, you asked if I draw, like, something that I hope helps me writing for artists is that in college, one of my two theses, I wrote and drew and lettered and did the whole thing, a graphic novel. So I know the whole process. I've done every part um, in in comics production, but the thing that I can do professionally is writing. And I should note as well, my low key thing I respect the most is lettering because I did a shit job of it, and then I had to have my friend come in and re-letter the whole thing because
Mhm.
Oh
it
wow.
was so bad. But I sure tried and I sure did it. So I've done everything involved with making a comic. But yeah, I was already writing my bad scripts at 12. They were not that good.
That's
They were certainly not that good. But if you're an artist, a visual artist, you often start by doing work that's heavily influenced by the people that you liked. If you look at artists, they'll often their influences show very strongly early on, and then they grow into sort of their own style. And I think it was the same way with me. Like I didn't really understand what writing was. Obviously, at that age, I was sure trying, but they were just bad impressions of Grant Morrison and James Robinson at that time, and
Uh,
not much more. And some might say that's still what I'm doing, but that's up for my readers to decide.
and so then on that, like what um what was it? So which comic that you like pitched, and you said you felt like that you made it around like 27, 28. You said,
Well, that's
or
when I
like
finally
2015.
that's when I finally sold something. I had done in 2008. I was part of an anthology at Image called Outlaw Territory, which was nominated for an Eisner.
oh,
And of course, I thought that was going to be it, but getting 8 pages in an anthology is not is not the foothold you would think it is. So I did that, and then it was 4 years until I got published by Vertigo, and then it was another 2 years until both. Um, well, my image book Undertow was accepted, and then around that time, in parallel, I got the chance, probably because of Undertow, finally getting into production to pitch for Midnighter, which became my first book at DC. So,
Yes.
I did my old job for as long as I could, but it's a lot of doing these things is a lot of work. So around 2015, I went full time in comics, and so far, knock on wood, I've been making it work ever since.
Okay. I
Awesome.
mean, that's very cool. Since you did mention it, so how did Midnighter come to be?
Well, everything about comics and the entertainment industries in general is networking. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, I had spent 15 years making connections at DC, but even that was not enough to get me hired because I had no track record. So, when I landed Undertow, I then finally had something I could show to these editors that already knew me but couldn't find a way to get me hired because why would anyone hire someone with no credits?
Mm-hmm.
Look, here's a book that's complete. I'm professional. I'm timely. I can make a professional looking product. With that in their hands, they could get me a chance to pitch. And I had pitched, I'd been pitching DC for probably 5 to 10 years at that point. And with no traction because things would get past the editors that knew me, but the people that they were selling to didn't know me. So like, why would we work with this kid? But with Undertow in hand, and the debut of the Burnside Batgirl, which kind of caught fire, there was this idea in the office that we wanted to see what other characters we could spotlight in a similar way. And I happened to be in the office in the summer of 2014, and a friend of mine who I had been, working with and failing to get things approved for at least since 2012 said, well, what would you do if you could do something similar to Batgirl within a DC character? And of course I said Midnighter. So that's where the pitch began. But part and parcel to that is that since I was that person at age 12 to 14 meeting people, I would not have gotten the chance to pitch Midnighter if I hadn't spent the time in between showing these people my drive and determination. And that means accepting, again, hundreds of pitches that were rejected before that. You don't just, I mean, some people do, of course, but in my case, I couldn't just walk in and pitch Midnighter. It was a decades long journey to get the chance to even do the pitch. And then, of course, if I screwed up the pitch, you wouldn't be talking to me today.
So with Midnighter, was it important to you that you did specifically a gay male main character?
I mean, I would have taken any job I could to get into
Mhm.
comics, like to be clear. But it was certainly in the mindset. This was the beginning of the very start of when folks were sort of doing the push for representation behind the scenes and not just on the page. So it fell into place very nicely, and of course, I was proud to be the person to do the first gay male led book at Marvel or DC.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to lie to you and say that I wouldn't have gladly written Batman for my. I would have written Ambush Bug if they had a slot for me.
Mhm.
But I do think that the sort of the the mindset was to sort of get folks behind the scenes on these characters, especially with DCYRU that had gone through some of the experiences of these characters. It's no coincidence that this same creative summit where we pitched Midnighter to the room is also where I met David Walker, who is going to be revitalizing Cyborg for the same push, same publishing initiative. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of what we did with Midnighter. That is not to say that if I had gone in and they said like, we need to reboot Grifter, I wouldn't have been like, here I am. But suffice to say, I'm very happy to have that be my first DC Capes work.
Nice,
Awesome.
nice. That is pretty cool. Did you have any questions, Hoarder?
Oh, definitely. First off, I was wondering, Steve, what similarities and parallels do you see between Midnighter and Batman?
Oh man, it's hard. I mean, like I got to think. I mean, obviously Midnighter was a long, long time ago. I've done a ton of work since then.
Yes.
But it is, I mean, I honestly think that the comparisons between Batman and Midnighter are sort of a misnomer. Midnighter's creators referred to him as the Shadow by way of John Woo. So,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean there's not a relationship. But what I would say is that he's a reflection of one of the like two major influences of Batman. The Shadow was a huge influence upon Batman, and Midnighter in the same way, like the Shadow sort of takes a facet of Batman and blows it out into its gonzo extreme. In this case, it's the vengeance, it's the violence, and all these things. Midnighter doesn't have the rules Batman does, and so much like how the Shadow is obsessed with punishment and sort of takes one part of this character to an extreme. Midnighter does the same. Of course, he doesn't predate Batman, but with the two of them, I think you also get an interesting reflection in how they deal with the horrific events of their lives, right? Because even though, and that to me, I think is the fun idiosyncrasy of Midnighter, even though his life is much more horrific on the whole than Batman's, and he's, obsessed with ultraviolence, it's his pastime. I would almost argue he's better adjusted in many ways. Like, yes, Batman does not gleefully murder people, but between the two of them, Midnighter only has one personality. He's completely unified. He's Midnighter all the time, everywhere he goes. He's content with who he is. Of course, who he is terrifying, but that's a different discussion. So I almost think that you have that he's almost a. I mean, they were created as a satire of Superman and Batman that grew into something much more and something beloved. And I think that he is a satire of the violence that you see in vigilante characters, including Batman, especially Batman. But then you also have a reflection of how they deal with the violence in their lives. Bruce. Clearly, I mean, he's still operating with a secret identity. One would argue that he's never gotten over his parents dying, and he's now nebulously in his mid-30s, and happened 20 years ago. In
Yeah.
real life, that's someone who needs to find a way to get closure.
Yes.
Conversely, Midnighter has closure. He's totally happy with who he is. Again, it's just that who he is horrifying.
One thing I definitely wanted to bring up for sure is I got to ask this question. How crazy and exciting is it to be helming one of the X-Men flagship titles with you doing Marauders in March?
Exciting, intimidating. Take all of the words, all of the aidings that you would like for this. But it is an exponential version of all of those. Marvel's been incredibly supportive. They've been supportive of my ideas. They've been supportive of the books in a sales and marketing way, and it's all incredibly appreciated. And we're breaking new ground with Marauders. Jerry and the folks that worked with him on that book did an incredible job. We would never try to mirror that. So what we're doing is we're focusing in on the other side of the mission, the rescue part of the Marauders. That's something that I've been part of, like disaster relief and rescue after hurricanes and things like that. That's the thing I've done in real life. So to be able to turn a superhero version of that is very, I should say, at least I don't even know if the X-Men books are superhero books anymore currently. They're science fiction books. But to be able to turn a fantastic version of that is really exciting. And in a story sense, you folks don't know what's coming, but there are really big revelations in Marauders that, to be frank, I wasn't sure I'd be able to get away with. I thought might intimidate some people, but the atmosphere has been really supportive. It's been aggregate. They've aggregated the story and made and encouraged me to make it even bigger. And that's all very, very exciting. And creatively, it's a community that it's pretty rare to find in any industry, but that you have it in the X-Men office where we're all just trying to make each other as good as possible so that you folks can get books that are as good as possible.
And in case anyone doesn't know, at least the first volume of Marauders is basically a swashbuckling pirate type X-Men book, and it was very unique. It was, I think, one of the most interesting of the books that came out right around the big massive Hickman story arc with Krakoa and everything.
Well, so famously put Kate Pryde, we gave her a cutlass and put her in a big red jacket. And
I know, I saw the cover. It looks awesome.
Even more of an icon than she was before. So.
Yes. Captain Pryde, yes. Flash, do you have another question?
No, I feel like I had one, but my brain, I feel like I always forget what I'm going to ask.
I got more,
yeah,
definitely.
No, for sure. Keep going. I'll let you know.
Steve, what is your favorite comic book that you're currently reading?
Oh, man. Currently reading. Oh, you know what? There's a couple. I mean, and you mean currently coming out, because the things I'm currently reading are bizarre and often accidental spoilers.
Okay, I understand.
Although I'll say this, it's not like I'm not doing Moon Knight, but the excitement around the character with the trailer got me to go back and reread the series that Shelby worked on. And then I followed further in a way I never had before. I never read the Smallwood and Lemire run of Moon Knight, and I really, really enjoyed it. I just finished that last week. So that's not
Awesome.
like current, but it's current for me because I never got time for it. Same with Philip Kennedy Johnson and Ricardo Federighi's The Last God, which is what I'm reading literally right now.
Okay.
And which actually, I mean, not to light your comments on fire, I read because I tried watching the Wheel of Time show and honestly thought it was pretty boring. So I wanted some good fantasy in my life.
I haven't
And
seen it yet. I'll have to, yeah.
well, look, and before I get struck by lightning, that is not an indictment of the books. I just think the show itself did not do the work to show us why we should care about this world and these characters. But that is not in no way a judgment of the source material.
Oh, I understand.
Um, so I'm doing that, and I also, I mean, look, you'll see my tastes run very particular. I love Kieran and Assad on Eternals, and I'm sticking with PKJ and Federici. I'm loving the World saga that's coming out of Action Comics right now. Oh, and special spotlight goes to the Thing comic that I think Riley Brown is drawing. Or Tom Riley. I have to look it up now, so that I'm not completely talking out my ass. Uh, but I love that book every month. I'm just having a complete like it's Sunday morning. What is going on? Tom Riley is the artist, and it's written by Walter Mosley, and I'm loving that book every month that it comes out.
Cool. And let's see here. You mentioned, give me 1 second here. Oh, yeah, Moon Knight. For me, I'm having a similar situation with Moon Knight because no one ever took me aside and said, Hoarder, Moon Knight, his big thing is fighting vampires and Dracula. Like, I saw the meme with Dracula. I thought that was a one-off. I thought, oh, for some reason, Moon Knight came across Dracula. And then I found out about Khonshu, and I've been really enjoying McKay's run. That's actually where I came in. I'm doing every month of McKay's run and following it currently. And now, yeah, I definitely want to check out the previous runs of it because I really like the character, and it was
Yeah.
this cool, like, surprise for me.
It's well, he debuted in Werewolf by Night actually, way back in the
Ah.
day. So he's always been this horror adjacent character, and I think it works. You know, I've always rooted for that guy, so I'm really happy to see him getting a come up now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely think the show looks interesting. Like I was watching Peacemaker yesterday, and for some reason I was like, wow, like this is like, I mean, obviously like the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker stuff, like that stuff's good, but like it's also like pretty violent, right? And then I was seeing the stuff yesterday about how like Kevin was saying that like, this is something where they're not holding back on the violence, and I'm like,
Yeah,
that's
Kevin
gonna be
Feige was saying
intriguing.
it's going to be the most brutal show that they've had for a Marvel character. So, and now a lot of people are thinking like, okay, are the Netflix Marvel shows coming to Disney,
Oh
or are they
yeah,
going to Hulu if this is the case? Yeah.
yeah, definitely seems. I mean, it definitely could seem because the Netflix Marvel shows are like a lot more like, what's the right word?
Adult.
There we go. Yeah, that's the right word. And so if they're introducing Moon Knight, which is supposed to be like more violent than the Netflix shows, then that is a good segue to move them onto the same platform as Moon Knight, because it's
Definitely.
like it's not as bad as Moon Knight, as if like that's something, that needs to be done. But they're like, hey, we have Moon Knight on here. There's no reason that we can't have these on here either. But yeah. So then, outside of just comic books, do you watch like a lot of like the Marvel and the DC shows and stuff like that?
You'll find that sometimes the people with the least time to watch these things are the people making the comics because
That's fair.
but that's because we're in the trenches. But I am keeping up on as much as I can. I do really love the Peacemaker show. I think John Cena is a treasure. Uh,
Yeah,
but I also just
He's great.
love. I mean, look, I grew up reading Doom Patrol. I like a weird Capes book. So like, I was in love with the Peacemaker show the minute the titles ran on the first
yeah,
episode.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That was
The
yeah.
lyrics to that song are insane if you check them out.
Yeah, it's very good. And so I mean, I most of the streaming service shows I can take the time for because they're relatively short. The things that I unfortunately miss are usually network shows because the seasons are just so long. You know, like
Yeah.
I wanted to watch, for example, the Agents of Shield season that had Ghost Rider in it because I love Robbie Reyes. I love
Hmm.
all the Ghost Riders, but I will say I think Robbie is my favorite. And so I wanted to watch that real bad. I just like it's like 22 episodes, you know, and that's a fair bit for someone like me who, you know, we comic creators work a lot.
Yeah.
And the same goes for a lot of the CW shows, though I do try to keep up with Superman and Lois with the heavy caveat of I have not even started this season yet. So it will happen, but it is, you know, the shorter a show is, the easier it is for me to make time for. You know, I'm also it's not Cape stuff, but I'm very excited that Raised by Wolves is back. I love that show on HBO Max.
Mm,
I've been meaning to check
Um,
that out. I'll definitely do that
yeah.
then.
it is a good Raised by Wolves is like a modern version of sci-fi, but it's like you took the aesthetic of The Day the Earth Stood Still and what I would call like pulp 50s, 60s sci-fi and
Really?
and then like skipped over. It's as if like Star Wars and Star Trek and all of the more like what I would say call high sci-fi in the way that you have high fantasy and sword and
Hmm.
sorcery.
Hmm.
This is like the modern version of like the sword and sorcery of sci-fi to me, and I'm really
Oh
fascinated
wow.
by it. Like it's brutal, it's you know it's very raw in its ideas and things like that. The design sense even just feels very. I mean, the lead character looks kind of like uh, the robot from Metropolis, even. So, like, I find it really fascinating. And there's nothing wrong, obviously, with high sci-fi. I love Star Trek, but it is really we've never really seen what, for lack of a better term, I would call Sword and Planet, other than things like John Carter.
Hmm.
And like I just think the tone and style of the show is really, really unique. So that's back. I have not been able to watch it yet, but it's only once a week, so I'm going to cache a few episodes, and then we're probably going to dig into that.
Cool.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, I was trying to keep up with Superman and Lois, and then I didn't even end up finishing last season. Like, I really enjoy it, and like, I enjoy like Tyler Hoechlin and stuff like that. But I'm just like, I just kept forgetting. Actually, Naomi's pretty good. The new show, the
Oh,
new
is it,
DC
so
show.
that's a good example. I didn't even know it had started yet.
Yeah, it's on like
Like,
episode
and
five or
David is a
six.
friend of mine, as I said. So now I feel like a huge ass. Um, because he is a friend. I will once that has a couple out, I'll watch that too. I would always watch
I
that
mean,
to
it's
see what
already. Yeah,
David.
I think it has like
Oh my
six,
god.
7 out. Yeah.
You're just making it feel worse, Flash. Stop.
Well, he said a few. I'm like, what do you mean? It's already at 6. Like,
A few has a wide variety of meanings, we'll
no,
say.
no, no. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So, another question I have: do you feel like it's a fight to bring diversity into comic books, and how do you deal with the trolls and haters like Comicsgate and things like that?
It's not necessarily a fight in my, and I can only speak in my experience, by the way. Like much like I mean, folks know like the same person can pitch the same idea and it can come off two different ways, you know, and they can
Yes.
have two different
Mhm.
experiences with the same idea. So I can only speak to my experience. It hasn't been much of a fight for me. Maybe that's because of how I approach how I approach things. I didn't want to say how I approach story because you know I know some people have struggled more than me with it, and they're better writers than I am. But I am, for my old job in Wine and Spirits, at least pretty experienced in knowing how to propose things to folks in a way that is as easy for them to accept. So, like you know, maybe how I pitch things up the line is different than how other pitch it up the line. I don't know because I'm me.
Hmm.
So I've never really had a huge issue. This is one or two, you know, but nothing like I know other people have gone through, and that's my little caveat with that. Like I know it
Okay.
can be a struggle for people. I haven't personally experienced that, but I'm not here to be like, oh well, that didn't happen to that person. I'm sure it did because everybody can have a different experience, you know, in the same way that uh, I mean, you know, if you work in an office, you obviously know, like I said, three people can have the same idea and it can read three different ways
Hmm.
because of suppositions and things like that and track record. I'm very lucky that I haven't had much of a struggle with these things. And of course, I'm sympathetic to people who do because I know that I'm in a lucky spot with that. And as far as people who aren't on board with that stuff, you know, it, look, I'm from Central New York. I can handle people having idiot opinions. Like, I mean, when I was in elementary school, people were throwing change on the floor and see if I would pick it up at me, like in Borat, because I'm Jewish. Like,
Oh my God.
I've been dealing with this stuff for my whole life. People saying they're going to throw my mom in an oven. So like I don't. It takes a lot to really bother me. Uh, and again, I can only speak to my own experience. For me, like if people want to scream their opinions, I mean, honestly, like that they have the right to, but I don't have to pay credence to them or really give a shit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's where I stand on that. So you know, it's too bad, but it does take a fair amount to bother me. Again, I know. Again, the same comments might really bother other people. But listen, people can like or dislike something even for the dumbest of reasons, and that's fine. When it gets into harassment and things like that, I mean, obviously that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
But that's what the mute button's for.
Hmm.
If people step out of line. But that's really, that's really where I stand on it. Like I've dealt with plenty of real life bullying. I mean, when you're a queer Jewish person, there's any number of reasons people try to fuck with you even on the street.
Mhm.
So at least in my case, like social media is easy to just compartmentalize off.
Yeah.
And again, I'm lucky for that. I guess I'm lucky that I've dealt with other shit in real life. Unlucky to have, but in this context, lucky for it. But yeah, I mean, listen, people can think what they want. It doesn't mean I have to agree to it, obviously, and we're not here to pay credence to it. I guess is my answer. It's
That's an
like
excellent answer.
the goal for me, like in Mad Men, where the guy gets into the elevator and is like, "I pity you," and Don Draper's like, "I don't think about you at all."
Yeah.
Um, that's the goal, like it would be at least, provided they are not being abusive. It would be wrong for me to like say that these people shouldn't be screaming into the void if it's something they feel they need to do, but I certainly don't need to reckon with it in my daily life.
Yeah, and me and my friends were having a conversation like about like because Netflix recently put out the Christmas movie with like the two gay male leads, and it was like we never like the thing about it is what people don't understand is that like we never asked for like anything extra. Like the movie's stupid. All Christmas movies are stupid. All rom coms are dumb. We
I
weren't
was going to say,
asking.
not for the record, Batman Returns not stupid as far as
No,
Christmas movies
no,
go.
that's fair. That's fair. I meant like rom coms in general. Like all rom coms are cheesy. All rom coms are like dumb to a sense. It's like we weren't asking for like something like new. Like we weren't asking for like anything different of like the regular formula that you see in like day to day like every rom com. We were just asking for like the representation. Like I didn't expect it to be like so good because the lead characters are gay males. I was just like just having the lead characters that like it's still going to be a cheesy rom-com. Like I'm still going to cringe at it. It doesn't matter whether it's gay or whether it's straight. Like it literally doesn't matter. It was just the fact that like it exists is like that's really all that matters, at least to me.
Oh, sure, but when you're not used to having any of your perceptions challenged, anything encroaching on it can feel threatening, and which
Yeah.
is not an excuse, by the way, but
No.
that's just, I think that's where a lot of that comes from, but that's not really worthy of sympathy or empathy, because if you are not in the mainstream by one vector or another, you've probably been waiting your whole life just to see that you can even participate in these stories.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't want to get into it too much more because we're devoting time to people who devote plenty of time to themselves and their own mind.
Hmm.
Uh, but
Yeah.
the fact is yeah, like when you're used to being in the seat of power, any type of equality or even approaching of representation feels like an affront. But notice that I said feels like. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's really all I'll say about that, because I'm going to get myself in trouble. I tend to swear a lot, and the fact is um, it's just like I said, like folks have a right to feel how they think as long as it doesn't encroach on our rights as
Hmm.
well. And
Yeah,
otherwise, it's just like we don't need to think about them.
that's fair enough. Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, so I've noticed from your Twitter, and we kind of spoke on it before. You definitely have like other interests and shows and stuff outside of comics. You're a wrestling fan as well. Is that's correct?
Oh, I definitely am.
How long have you been watching?
I mean, so I watched as a kid, but then I didn't really come back. I was out for like 15 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really come back until Sting came back.
Mm.
Ah,
And the funny thing was, I actually, even because Sting was my boy, I was always a WCW guy,
Mm-hmm.
which is in retrospect, is like being like it's like being the Mets fan of pro wrestling, you know. Including that you still watch even as it gets worse and worse. Like I was still
Hmm.
watching during 2000s WCW. Um, what was I saying? Oh, but even like so, I became friends with a great dude, Mike Kingston, who does this comic Headlocked, one of the hardest working guys in comics. And Mike frequently will have he's proud to say that everyone involved in his comic, the colorist, the other writers, the letters, everything, like they're all professional wrestlers except for him. He's the co-creator, or he's the creator, pardon me. And so I would always like sort of Mike and I lived in the same town. I would always be going to lunch with him and be like, "Oh, what's this guy about?" You know, and I was mostly just being a jackass, you know, like what's Razor Ramon up to these days, you know, and the answer was trying not to die in his case, and we're glad that he is doing better. But and then I heard Sting was coming back, and I still didn't necessarily like care. I mean, I cared, but I was not enough to watch. And then by complete happenstance, I was at Emerald City Comic Con in 20. That was WrestleMania 2015, same year that Midnighter came out. So I was at Emerald City Comic Con and sitting in the hotel lobby, and sure enough, WrestleMania 31 was on. And it was Sting and Triple H. And I was like, okay, this is fate telling me that I need to watch this. So um, and so I sat down and I watched, and of course, we all know now that Sting is a freak, like one of the greatest of all time, and at 62 is still crushing it. So
Hmm.
I was so happy to see him back, and after that, between that and having met a lot of wrestlers going on the road with my friend Mike Kingston to promote Headlocked, I was sort of in, and so I've been. I don't really have time to watch the shows week to week,
Hmm.
but certainly watch. I certainly watch my recaps. What Culture Wrestling,
Yeah.
Simon Miller, Ups and Downs. Simon, give this an up, my boy. But I will always try to make time for the pay per views and things like that. And there's a lot of crossover as well between wrestling and comics fans, and also
Hmm.
wrestling and comics creators. Like folks know that I've become acquainted with Danhausen, and that's probably because he's a comics fan. Like
Hmm.
I actually forget how we first talked,
Yeah.
uh, but it's probably because he loves Doctor Doom. And I just, I like that for the most part, they are comics and wrestling are both relatively yeoman like forms of entertainment. Like
Hmm.
we've obviously trumped up comics now so that they're $5 and they're on glossy paper and the hardcovers are like $75. But the reality is, back in the day, they were meant to be consumables, like on the train, blue collar, every folk type of entertainment that you would consume and usually throw out,
hmm
because they were on cheap paper. And the same goes for wrestling, where you are going to these like even now, like if I go to wrestling where I live, we're going to like the Polish Cultural Home, and people are setting up these rings, and it's all just very raw and real
Yeah.
and like of the people, and that's always really appealed to me. I certainly like going to it live much more than sort of the
Hmm.
watching on TV. It's why I only really watch the pay per views, because there's an energy in the air that
Yeah.
to me is part of it, you know.
Hmm.
And to that end, like most of my friends around here are not ongoing wrestling fans. They usually find watching it on TV boring, but I've never had someone have a bad time going to a show in person,
Yeah.
even if they had no idea what it was. So, yeah, I would say that I'm a fan, but really, as like most things in my life, we owe it to Sting. So thanks, Stinger. And yeah, I've been in. When he finally retires, I'll be very sad, but also happy that he's gotten to retire on his own terms. But we're
Hmm.
very
Yeah.
happy with his current run in AEW.
Yeah. And then another thing I noticed that you seem to retweet or tweet about is Drag Race.
So my boyfriend is his best friend was on season 11 of Drag Race. So when we met, I had not watched a lot of Drag Race.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, uh, I mean, I was just working an angle basically with some of my other friends, but I was certainly performing, disliking it more than
Yeah.
I did. To the end that I cut a deal with my future co-writer Steve Fox that for every hour of Drag Race that I would watch, he would have to watch an equal amount of wrestling. And because he's weaker than me, this ensured that I just didn't have to watch Drag Race.
Hmm.
Um, but I actually didn't dislike it at all. I was just
Yeah.
I love playing a character and I love
Hmm.
working an angle. So when I met my guy, there was no choice. Obviously, we had to support his friend who was going to be on the season. And yeah, now I'm into it, and I'm into it for a lot of the same reasons, honestly, that I'm into wrestling. Like the
Hmm.
best wrestling characters are you, but turned up to like 15. And
Yeah.
the best drag characters are also you, but turned up to 15. The ones that really
Hmm.
work. Like if you watch Bob the Drag Queen is just a hyper real version of Bob out of drag.
Yeah.
And that's why it seems natural,
Hmm.
and so on and
Same
so
with
forth.
Bianca.
Yes, same with Bianca, same with a lot of these folks. So same with Ariel Versace, who's my boyfriend's best friend. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate it. I appreciate drag for the literally same reasons that I
Yeah.
appreciate wrestling and comics. And I'm not, or I should say, virtually the same because we've just given up on the real meaning of literal these days,
Yeah.
including myself, clearly. So it's obviously it can be super flashy,
Yeah.
like you see on Drag Race, but it can also be something that people just do because they need to, and it can be very like on the ground. It
Yeah.
started with that. It started as like an underground sort of rebellious form of art, and I love it, and I love the performance and the creativity for all the same reasons. What I don't love is all of the like sniping and like if
Yeah.
I never watched Untucked, that would be great. I don't really have a choice because relationship rules. To most but like,
Honestly,
I don't need to watch people being cruel to each other. If I
yeah.
want to do that, I will just go on Twitter. So like,
Yeah.
that's not really appealing to me. But the creativity and everything around it is
Yeah.
really exciting to me.
My fiance is the exact same way. Like he, prior to, I mean, to be fair, we've been together like 8 years now almost. But like, I would just watch Drag Race by myself for like 4 or 5 years, and I think it wasn't until season 12 that he finally. I mean, what a season to start with. I wouldn't have chosen that for him, but that's when he started, and then he's been basically outside of like the ones that aren't in English, so like Spain, Holland, anything like that, he'll watch it all with me. But like I have this rule because I have a difficulty with just like when I'm not doing anything, I'll just like scroll Twitter, right?
Hmm.
So I have a problem with not doing that. So as soon as he gets home from work, like Tuesdays or like Fridays, like as soon as he gets home from work on Tuesday, I'm like, okay, we have to watch UK versus the world so I can get back on Twitter. Like, because I'm gonna do it without thinking, and then I'm gonna see spoilers and I'm gonna be like upset at myself. I mean, it's my fault fully, I understand. But I'm just like,
Or
here, one rule. As soon as we get the chance when Drag Race comes out, we watch it and then we can move on with our day. Like, and thankfully he's been like mostly okay with it. There's some days he's like, I don't want to watch it right now, and I'm like, okay, like that's fine, but yeah, no, but yeah. So I enjoy Drag Race for. I mean, I'm also been watching wrestling off and on for 20 years now, since 2003. I think the first pay-per-view I remember is the first Royal Rumble Brock won, and then
I was already out by then, but I've obviously gone back and watched it
yeah.
since then. I mean, I listen. Everybody works their ass off on Drag
Mhm.
Race. I will say that, like in a vacuum, Dragula is much more of my type of
Oh
show because
yes,
folks have to like. It's like every week is a fucking sewing challenge there. Like folks
yes.
actually have to
Hmm.
make things instead of be told the prompts before. I guess spoilers for people who don't know that, but the majority of people on Drag Race, the majority of the challenges they know beforehand and can spend
Hmm.
like weeks or months making things before they come.
Hmm.
Oh
Um,
wow, okay.
and that's not to say that is not an incredible amount of work. It's just different.
Yeah.
I'm not denigrating one to uplift the other.
No, I completely
However, if
understand.
I had to choose, I would rather see people under pressure being creative like they are on
Yeah.
drag. And also, for folks who don't know, the Boulets are huge comic fans, and one of them interned at Harris Comics, who used to own Vampirella.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Today, so and they're and I won't say more, but they've become good friends. We took over Heavy Metal magazine in October, yeah, I won't betray their specific comic bugaboos and interests and things like that, but suffice to say, they've got strong opinions about what I would generously call C-list Avengers characters. So
Okay.
That is fair. Yeah, that is fair. Yeah. No, I mean that makes sense. It's all different. Like, some people may literally not like it. Some people just like. I mean, everyone has their own opinion on stuff. So that's understandable. I mean, I enjoy Dragula as well. I watch it like whenever it's on, and like, but like then I mean, I watch it all pretty much. Like, Dragon in general to me is like super intriguing, just because like what they do I think is super cool. But like, yeah, but yeah.
Steve, you mentioned you try to keep up with comic shows, movies. Are you a fan of gaming and playing comic focused games at all?
I mean, I'm not a fan, like, which is gonna sound like I'm teeing up something really horrific to say about video games, and I'm not. But the only reality is, like, if I don't have time to watch a 20-minute show, I certainly don't have time to play like a 13-hour game. So,
Yeah,
so
Sure.
you know,
13. What game's
I
13 hours?
I I enjoy that, and video game creation is an art just like anything else, and I'm in sort of in awe of it. Lots of times gaming amounts to me working down my reading list as my boyfriend plays video games next to me, which is fine with me. But I do enjoy them when I have the time. It's just that qualifier. I will, however, say that much like I will always show up for Sting, I will always show up for a new Mortal Kombat or new Injustice game
Ah, cool.
or anything from NetherRealm. And I did just start Aliens Fireteam Elite last night,
Oh,
and
nice.
I mean, knock on wood, I've literally gotten through, or I've actually gotten through only one level, but I really enjoyed it. So,
Yeah.
um, I love the ideas and the creativity behind gaming. It really just comes down to like I gotta sleep sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the answer there. But I do I have no specific animus other than against my deadlines. But those are the things that keep the lights on. So
Have you had a chance to play Alien Isolation at all?
um, I I think my guy tried it. I haven't played it.
Okay.
Something you should know about me as well is that I'm secretly much older than my already somewhat old body. So like I find the controls of modern gaming extremely challenging. I think I may have tried isolation and like could barely understand like what all the buttons do. Like the modern controller has so many things. Even on Fireteam
Yes.
Elite, there are certain functions that I know I will just never use because I can't remember that it's even a thing to do.
Oh.
Like I mean, and here I am sounding like, oh, these newfangled, but like but it is true. Like the minute we switched off and my guy was playing the second level, and he was like, oh, if you tap the if you press the stick instead of rotate the stick, I was like, I didn't. Okay, like I will just never remember that you can both press and rotate like too much. So and the same we tried Wolfenstein, and I just could not get my head around the
Oh.
fact that one of the things moves your head and one moves your legs. It's hard enough for me to do that in my real human body. I certainly can't do that on a video game screen. So yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that's what happened with Isolation because we do like survival horror. We tried whatever the survival horror Resident Evil was that came out relatively
Oh,
recently.
Village.
You could say anything, and
Okay.
I would believe you. But we did try that one, and I was fascinated by the whole concept. But it was like, I mean, I could never have played it alone. To be clear.
That's fair. Like, you couldn't play it alone just because the controls.
Oh yeah, no, I
Okay.
wouldn't.
Okay.
Okay.
I was like, see,
I
I
need a
can never play it alone because I get scared. So
no, I
I
need a
wasn't sure which one.
chaperone. I need training wheels.
That's fair. Yeah, yeah. No, I just don't do well with scary games. Like, yeah, no.
But I was really impressed with the Aliens game, honestly. And it was to me, it's always the little details, like it's that the sound effects are taken. It's the same from the movie. It's
Yes.
it's that you have the little like life forms scanner, just like they do in Aliens. You can use you can set up sentry guns and things just like in Aliens. Like I was really impressed the gameplay was basically just Halo, according to my guy, but like the stories around it and everything, and the bells and whistles of the world, I was really really impressed with. And my friend Philip is writing the Alien comic, so the minute some elements showed up for spoilers and shit like that, but
Ah,
um, you'll never know if I got any.
That's funny. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think.
so Steve, what is your favorite comic book character, and what character would you like to write that you have not yet?
Well, I mean, my favorite character in like broadly like Pulp Fiction is the Shadow, and I did get to
Oh,
write him
awesome. Yeah.
twice, which I was very lucky for. I would like to do a solo Shadow comic someday. Um, my favorite DC character is Martian Manhunter, and again, you'll see that. I mean, like my favorite thing I've ever done at DC, and one of my favorite things I've ever done in general was the Martian Manhunter comic. I've never
Mm.
been prouder of a book at DC than Martian Manhunter. So that's off of that list. Um, let me see. I mean, well, actually, one of my favorite, if not my favorite Marvel character for a long time was Captain America, and I've gotten to do a little bit, but not as much as I'd like to. So that's on the list for sure. I mean, I'm writing X-Men stuff, so
Yeah.
that's a big, gopher smacked back into the machine.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I do love a challenge. So I think it's pretty well known to folks that the Inhumans are on my list. I also
Hmm.
love Captain Universe. I was really happy he showed up briefly at the end of King of Black. Spoilers for an event from a year ago, I suppose. Um, and actually, there is a specific answer as well that would not have been the answer 2 years ago. So this is a good one because I really love what Jonathan and Teeny did with Apocalypse in Cross of Swords, taking a
Hmm.
character who I think in many ways was kind of like the dark side of X-Men. Like you knew why he was scary and he was sort of like the final boss, but he didn't have a ton of depth. It was just like survival of the fittest. Much
Hmm.
like Darkseid is evil because he's the god of evil. And you can only pull that card once, right? There can only be one guy who's evil just because. Um, and then you got this whole backstory with Apocalypse and how it was, and it became so much richer. And he's still a terrible person in many ways, but I do find him really compelling as an anti-hero now. Like
Hmm.
he reminds me of the operative from Serenity, where it's like I feel like he truly doesn't think he's worth the world he's building, and that's very sort of tragic and moving to me. So, and the
Hmm.
reason I bring this up is because I've never written Apocalypse, because by the time I got to the office, he was off with Genesis in another dimension, and so I would love to be able to do something with him once he's back. There's probably some answers that like from places I haven't worked yet. I love Godzilla. I got to do Transformers. Um, here's the best answer too because there's been some sort of, I don't know if the characters can ever come back, but I love the Ultraverse characters as well.
Okay.
And I think that there's some stuff going on with them where they can't be used, which is a bummer. But I love Prime. Like a lot of the things that Marvel's acquired, I'm already, making a nuisance of myself, being like, can we do like I've already asked about Ultraverse. I love Mystic by Ron Mars and Brandon Peterson, and all the cross-gen titles are owned by Marvel now. So my answers are going to be much weirder probably than other people who are just like Daredevil. And I love Daredevil, by the way, but like, I mean, I'm trying to give people answers that they wouldn't expect, but they're all still true.
Yes.
Like if lightning struck the timeline and Prime was available tomorrow, it would be the thing I want to write most. So
Okay. That's cool.
And then I know that since you have to go by 11, so there's a segment that we always do since we do collaborate with like Unsinkable and stuff like that. We always ask our guests like what was their unsinkable moment of the week, which is like a moment dealing specifically with like mental health, where maybe you had like anxiety or something and how you overcame that. Um, if do you have anything that comes to mind in the last like week or so, maybe?
I mean, the challenge for me is always sort of the alchemy of stress, right? And so on a given day, it's funny because both my trainer and my doctor are like, try being less stressed, and I'm like, oh, good idea, Clyde. Except for the fact that my whole life runs on deadlines.
Hmm.
So I will say that, I mean, you can pick a day, and there's usually some grenade that comes into my schedule. And if you don't focus it into something, into eustress, in my case, it definitely blows up into anger and things like that. So,
Hmm.
um, the challenge for me is always turning it into eustress. I can't talk about things specifically just because in my case, it'll all be, behind the scenes industry stuff that
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying in public. But there's always challenges, shall we say, in a shared universe and a deadline-driven freelance economy. And so my best solution is usually going to the gym to turn that into eustress and turn it into power. Um, and I've certainly managed to do that this week. I didn't have any moments of of extreme anger. I don't have like sexy examples, just because it literally is every day, basically.
No, I mean that's fair. I mean,
It's you every day when you're freelance can be extremely stressful, and it often is. But the key for me is finding ways to mitigate it, and whether that is, like I said, like turning that nervous energy into like fuel for exercise. It doesn't have to be the gym. Sometimes I will do Pilates or yoga or things like that. It doesn't have to be like some big, like I'm getting big, or even or finding ways to, when you're overwhelmed with a task, to give yourself small rewards. In my case, I work from home, so if I'm blocked on something else and losing my mind, like if I'm blocked in a script, I've learned that I can mitigate that by doing accomplishing some sort of home task, whether it's making the bed or doing the laundry or doing the dishes. This all seems really mundane. However, then you're like, oh, I have accomplished something,
oh yeah.
rather than staring at a script for 2 hours and being like, what the fuck is wrong with me? You're like, oh, boom, I had something on my list and I knocked it off. And then usually in my case, the other thing doesn't seem as intimidating on
Yeah.
the other side.
No, yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. I guess, now that you mention it, I mean, working on constant deadlines, I can, and if you're having like writer's block, whatever the case may be, I can only imagine like how difficult and stressful it is when that's all that there is just deadline, deadline, deadline. I mean,
Well,
that's
the joke answer is that I made it through Friday when my best friend and worst enemy Steve Fox is just constantly tweeting about Willow Pill, and I made it through Friday without driving to Michigan to beat the shit out of him. So like that's a win.
but but it's Willow
But
Pill.
that's a joke answer.
I know, but at the same time, it is Willow Pill though. So what can I say?
I don't know what you mean, and I don't want to trap myself.
No, I listen. I want Willow Pill to win. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I sure don't, but I love that journey for you.
Listen,
Uh,
I accepted that it was cornbread, but then that happened. So, like,
yeah,
I
it has
fully
to. Now there
accepted in
should
my
be no
body.
winner. It should be no winner. Rue should just be like the world's next drag superstar should try harder next season,
Listen,
and
Rue's already been a villain this season. I don't need that. I don't need that.
she's a
Listen,
villain
lady.
all the time. She's a villain all the
Listen,
time, unless you're a fracture.
that's fair, but 2 weeks of Lady Camden, not that. Anyways, that's. I don't need to get into that either, but
We can
definitely.
agree. I mean, I love UK versus the world. I'm really struggling with this season. I will admit the
No,
main.
that's. I don't know what it is about Baga this time around. I'm just like, what the.
Oh no, I meant I'm struggling with the main Drag Race season.
Oh, that's fair.
I mean, I'm not struggling with UK versus the world. However, watching Baga,
I think it's so funny. Like she knows what she's doing. Like, and the editors are shady for like not like putting in the. Obviously, I'm assuming there are clips of her actually working on her dress this past week, but they're so shady to just like make it look like she literally physically did nothing and just slept. Like I know she did something, but I'm just like,
yeah, I'm also not that so like you're right, but I'm also not that sympathetic because a this show's been on for 14
oh
years.
yeah, for sure.
How are you on and you don't know how to sew?
Oh
Fuck
no, I agree
you. Like,
completely.
and I like Baga a lot, but
Uh
like,
huh.
fuck you, girl. Like, you
Yeah,
lose the sewing challenge.
yeah.
Like, it's like, how can you be surprised? Did you
This is
just pull
also
that?
your second season. Same with like Juju. Like, come on, this is your how many seasons have you been on? Like 17? Like, okay, come on.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's kind of my thing. Like, really, you're like, you didn't at least like try to come up with something for like the reading challenge or any of the challenges you like. I just don't understand how people can be so unprepared. Because yeah, like it's not like this is season one. You know what to expect. You're gonna have to do a
Hmm.
celebrity impression if you make it that far.
You're
You're
gonna
gonna
have
have
to
to do the
sew.
reading challenge. You're gonna
Hmm.
have to maybe learn how to sew. Like it's just wild to me. So
Yeah.
and everybody knows the rules of reality TV now. I almost feel like we are in this sort of hyper real era.
Oh yeah, no, I
It's not
understand.
reality. First of all, it's never been reality. But
No.
now we're living in like this Scream-esque era where everybody knows the roles of a given reality TV show season and is trying to be them, and you're not even getting who they really are,
Yeah.
Hmm.
or even a version of it. You
You
clearly
mean
people show up like, look at Mo Hart, like clearly decided she's the shit stirrer this season.
yeah. But I
And
mean she still gives great diary room, so
sure, it's just I don't know. As I said, I'm not there for the drama, so things like
that's
that can
fair.
never be.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. No, that's fair. Yeah, and then Hoarder, did you have an unsinkable moment?
Um, in all honesty, not really, because I'm a bit nervous because I'm having a colonoscopy tomorrow. So like it's something I'm
Oh.
not looking forward to. So that's kind of been weighing on me
Well,
every
let me
day
tell you,
this
Hoarder,
week.
it's
So
gonna be fine. I've had way bigger things in my ass in my life.
Oh my god.
thank you, Steve. Thank
You
you
got
for
nothing to worry about.
Oh
making
my
me feel
god.
better. Thank you.
Uh yeah. Okay. Okay, well then for me, let's think. I I thought that I was gonna have to put my dog down this week.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There was a moment on Wednesday where there was some incidents that and I had to call around to places to see if I was able to put my dog down. Um, didn't end up happening, just because of, I guess, legal reasons, whatever the case may be. Like they just didn't want to take the liability and stuff like that. But there were moments this week. There was a moment this week where I was like, I'm going to have to put my dog down. But thankfully, she's still here. She's okay now. We figured out what ended up happening. Okay, so like initially an incident happened and we were not given the full story. And so due to that, of course, like we were like, oh shoot, like if our dog is attacking someone, like we have to we almost legally don't have a choice. Like but then come to realize after we had gone through this entire like emotional moment where I'm like, no, like I'm literally having to put my dog down today. I lost my job because of it. Like I ended up like having to leave my work and they just like let me go because of it. Even though like I work at a pet place and they were aware of what was going on, but like that's a whole other story. This week was rough. And then um what ended up happening is we got the whole story was that like someone wasn't paying attention. She got stepped on. She stood up and was growling at them and barking at them. You know, wasn't attacking, wasn't doing anything. Was just like, yo, like you just stepped on me, and you're like a 200-pound human. I'm a dog. Like, don't step on me. And but then this person decided to like push her away, like get away. And I'm like, the last thing that you want to do when a dog's already mad at you is put your hands near her face. So that one thing led to another. I thought I was going to have to put her down. Thankfully, I didn't, but I have to definitely look into more ways of. I mean, in that specific instance, it never was going to be my dog's fault, but I have to look for ways where, like, she has some aggression along with food and stuff like that because ever since we got a puppy. So there are some underlying things that like I need to make sure that we're able to work on and train with her now so that you know not that like I said, not that I think it's her fault because she was stepped on and then like punched realistically, and so like she just bit. But yeah, this week was rough.
Well, I always blame the other human, man. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, like I said, that's fair. Like, but initially,
I'm
what?
impressed. I'm impressed with your ability, your self control. I'm much meaner when people are mean to my dog than when they're mean to me. The
Mhm.
housewives and not mind their own business attitude of my neighborhood has really been a challenge since I moved here because everybody's
Oh,
got an opinion about your dog.
yeah.
Um, but I'm also a very aggressive person, so I tend to win arguments.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. No, that I mean that makes sense. Yeah, no, it's just like this specific person. When we realized that she had food aggression, when we after we got a puppy, this specific person got too close to her while she was eating, and she like jumped at him, and then now stepped on her, and then hit her. And so because she was just growling, and but like, why would you put your hand near her face if she's already mad at you? And so we're like, like after the food issue, we're like if this happens again, like that's what we have to do. And then we were just told that the only thing that happened was that I accidentally stepped on her, and then she bit my hand. But then come to find out, oh no, yeah, she jumped up on the couch, was growling at me, and then I tried to push her away. And like, why would you put your hand in a dog's face when you just stepped on them? So we just weren't given the whole story. And so, like I said, in general, we went like 2 hours of like, oh my god, like I have to put my 7-year-old dog down, like, and then come to find out, oh no, it was your fault. Cool. So, thanks for not telling us in the first place. But yeah, no, it like that. But that was probably the roughest thing. And like I said, I lost my job because of it. So, yeah, rough week. But yeah. Anyways, but so I know that you said that you had to go. So did you have any like last minute questions, Hoarder?
I don't know.
Did you have any questions for us, Steve?
No, but I'm glad. I'm glad to be here, and I'm always happy to come back if you
Yeah,
guys, read the stuff and have more to talk about. I'd
yeah,
be back in a second.
for sure.
For more dazzling commentary, like I've given you for the past hour.
To be fair, that 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 was probably the best moment in the 3 podcasts, if I'm being honest. But that was just so funny. But
It's what I'm here for.
it's
I've never portrayed myself as the intellectual writer of comics. I'm just the loud, vulgar idiot, and I'm happy to be of service.
yeah,
But no, it's my pleasure, and I'd happily
yeah,
come back. So thank you guys for having me on.
yeah. No, I
Thank you very
definitely
much,
appreciate you
Steve.
coming
And
by.
everybody, remember, in March, Marauders #1, Steve taking over as writer for Marvel. Excellent book,
I'm definitely gonna
awesome
check it out.
series. So definitely check that out, please.
Yeah, for sure. Well then, it's another podcast down. Once again, Steve, thank you, and thank you,
Thank
Hoarder,
you,
for
Steve.
being the co-host. But yeah, everyone have a good rest of your Sunday.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, yeah. So we are rating. I was like, I figured we were, but of course, our back end person's a little slow. Um, but yeah, so we should be rating someone here soon.
You
Yes.
are what? What is that?
Rating. So I'll explain it to you.
Basically, all the viewers here are going to be going to another stream of
Yeah.
somebody doing something else, and it's like someone that we know. So it's like
Oh,
a rating party, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Not
okay.
a
So I was gonna say 'cause it still says live, but
No,
I'm
you're good to go. Yeah.
all right. Understood, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you. If
It
you
was
need
fun.
anything, just message me anytime, like I've
Yeah,
said.
for sure.
And it's good to meet you all.
Yeah, you
awesome,
too.
Steve. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a
Bye.
good afternoon.
Bye.
This guy.